What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Cilio's Network. The Oceania International Championships 2020 just occurred this past weekend, and this was a very important tournament and exciting to watch because Sword and Shield was legal for the first time outside of Japan. So these results are very interesting and very important for the standard format tournaments to come for the next few months. So I'll be looking at the archetypes that made Day 2 and analyzing some of the more interesting results of the decks that made Day 2. We don't have the Day 1 meta share yet, but I'm hopeful that we'll have that pretty soon because that will also be fun and interesting to analyze. Before we look at these results, shout out to PotownStore.com, the best place to get PTCGO codes, and you can use code CILIO for 5% off. Also, shout out to FlipsideGaming.com, where I write free articles, and you can use code CILIO, all caps, for 10% off of your next order, $10 or more. So, at the Oceania International Championships 2020, there were 405 Masters Day 1 playing in a 9-round Swiss standard format tournament. 49 of those players made Day 2 at a record of 6-2-1 or better. And in the official results, there's 48 in Day 2 because one player was DQ'd for an egregious deck list error. And I'll talk about that in just a few minutes when we get to the deck that it affects. But let's look at this pie chart supplied by PokeStats, PTCGstats.com, where they organized the results, all the Day 2 archetypes. So we'll just go down the list from the decks that had 1 share all the way to the deck that had 23 in Day 2. So there were 4 archetypes that had 1 player playing them in Day 2, and those were Lucametal ZACIAN with 1, Obstagoon with 1, Magcargo, Mareep, Mill, or Stall as it is listed here with 1, and then 1 Fire Toolbox / Ability ZARD, whichever one you want to call that. So they all had 1 player piloting them in Day 2. Then there were 2 Malamar and 2 Magcargo GX, so that's referring to Psychic Malamar or Spell Tag Malamar, not the MEWTWO and Mew variant of Malamar. And then 2 Magcargo GX, the attacking Magcargo GX, which focuses on taking prizes with Magcargo GX as your attacker. Next, there were 3 MEWTWO and Mew Welder decks, 3 CINCCINO Mill decks, which also are referred to as ZACIAN Mill sometimes, and then 3 Baby Blacephalon or Blacephalon Unbroken Bonds decks. There were 4 MEWTWO and Mew GX Malamar variants, so 6 Malamars altogether, 4 of them being the MEWTWO and Mew variant, 5 PIKAROM, and 23 ADP ZACIAN variants, or the variant of ZACIAN being ADP ZACIAN. So ADP ZACIAN took up just under 50% of Day 2, which I did expect this deck to be popular and successful, and it was one of the safest picks and universally agreed upon being one of the, if not the best deck in the format. So it's not a surprise so many good players brought the deck and did so well with it. And then PIKAROM was second most successful going into Day 2, and MEWTWO and Mew Malamar third most. And I definitely think ZACIAN, MEWTWO, PIKAROM, and Ability ZARD were kind of in people's top 4 plays for the tournament, at least according to the PokeStats power rankings and myself and some of my friends whose opinions I trust. I saw a lot of ZACIAN, PIKAROM, MEWTWO in the top 3 plays for the tournament, and then also Ability ZARD, depending on who you asked. So, and also CINCCINO Mill, but it was pretty much agreed upon that people didn't think CINCCINO Mill was winning this tournament, and a lot of people thought ZACIAN or MEWTWO or PIKAROM would. So it's not surprising to see these 3 decks up at the top. So the first one we'll talk about is CINCCINO Mill. So CINCCINO Mill had so much hype going into this tournament. I talked about it a ton on this channel. There were articles, other channels talking about it. There were 3 in Day 2 and 2 in top 8. There was officially only one in top 8 since one of the CINCCINO mills had that deck list error I mentioned and got DQ'd. So apparently at OCIC, they required every player to submit a deck list to check in. So many players just submitted one Pokemon 59 energy at check-in and then later submitted their real list. The player who was DQ'd, as far as I know, submitted one Pokemon 59 energy as their deck list and then made their CINCCINO deck list and then never actually submitted it. So that's what happened. They got to top 8, they were deck checked, and they didn't have CINCCINO mill submitted as their deck. They had one Pokemon and 59 basic energy. So very sad error, but protocol does say that it's a disqualification at this level of tournament in top 8. So CINCCINO mill did not have 2 in top 8 in the official results. There was only 1. That's why I put the asterisk up there. But CINCCINO mill, I did not think it would be wildly successful. I didn't think it would dominate the tournament. I did think it would have a handful in day 2. There was 3 in day 2. I would have not been surprised if there was maybe like 5 or 8 in day 2. But I did expect it to have a presence, and it making top 8 is not surprising. But like I said, I wouldn't have expected it to win the tournament. I wouldn't be surprised if it did or did not have top 8 presence, just because people were preparing for it. But it did end up making it in there. And I do think it's a strong archetype moving forward, but I don't think it is an overbearing presence in the meta whatsoever. Next, we've got MEWTWO and MALAMAR. There were 4 of these in day 2, being the 3rd most represented archetype in day 2, and 0 in top 8, which I don't think many people were expecting. I saw a lot of predictions saying there will definitely be Mew Malamar in top 8. There will be 2 MEWTWO Malamar in top 8. I think MEWTWO Malamar is going to be in finals. And then 0 of them in top 8. Of course, there are a lot of things that go into this, like what matchups did it hit, who played MEWTWO Malamar, did the best of the best play the deck, or did they choose other decks? Were the lists good? There's a lot of things to go into it, but there were 4 in day 2, so I do think the deck proved itself throughout the day 1 gauntlet. And then in day 2, of course, there's luck and which players are playing the decks, so are the best of the best on which archetype can come into effect. So the deck did prove itself, making its way into day 2 with 4 MEWTWO Malamars, but 0 in top 8 might have been a bit surprising for some players. I do think this is still a solidified tier 1 archetype moving forward in the standard format. And Psychic Malamar, on my tier list, I called it tier 3 questionably, and I think I would bump up Psychic Malamar to tier 2 now. It is situationally okay, but I still do think MEWTWO Malamar is overall more powerful than the Psychic / Spell Tag Malamar archetype, or variant of the Malamar archetype. Then we've got PIKAROM, another one of the hyped decks, expected to do well, a comfort pick for many players. There were 5 in day 2, making it the 2nd most represented in day 2. But again, like MEWTWO and Malamar, 0 in top 8. I think this was unexpected. I think players expected to see a PIKAROM in top 8. Some people expected it to even win the tournament. It got a lot in the new set, Quick Ball and Tapu Koko V, although only just 2 cards were major upgrades for the deck. Also, Professor's research to accelerate your game plan is also very good for the deck. But like MEWTWO Malamar, I'm going to say a lot of the same things for PIKAROM. It proved itself in this meta by making it to day 2, 5 of them making it into day 2. And then you have all of those things that it comes down to which players piloted it. Did they hit good or bad matchups? Were the decks optimal? Or the deck lists optimal? So I think it solidifies itself here as a tier 1 archetype, but it did not make it into top 8. And you know, you could run this tournament back a million times and maybe you would have every archetype make top 8 at least once. But it all comes down to all of those factors, and it's hard to replicate that every time and say that this is how it would happen every time, because I don't think that is so. Deck lists change, misplays change, matchup knowledge change as well. So I do think it's a tier 1 deck moving forward. It just did not make top 8 at this specific event. Next, we've got Ability ZARD. There was one in day 2, one in top 8, and one in top 8 actually made it into the finals and got second place. This was my pick for the tournament. I really wanted it to win, but it did not win like it did in LAIC, but I still think it was a great call. I talked about the list in detail in my most recent video, and I wasn't too sure about a couple of the choices, but overall this archetype I think was just so good for the tournament for reasons I talked about in videos leading up to OCIC and also in the discussion. It's a very aggressive deck. The 9 Temptations from Ninetales is something that other decks do not have. It's a gust effect. It's guaranteed. That can bring up anything, and you can use it over and over. It has anti-mill strategies inherently in the deck with Victini and also the Ninetales to get around the dolls. It has one-shot potential with Reshi. It can one-shot ZACIAN Vs, which is super good in this format. I think it's an overall solid archetype, and in my tier list recently for OCIC, I did put this in tier 1, but I said that it might drop back down to tier 2 after the tournament, just like it did for LAIC, so we'll have to see if this one solidifies itself as a tier 1 archetype. I can't confidently say that this deck will stay tier 1 for the rest of the standard format, but I think at lowest it'll be tier 2. Next, we've got MEWTWO WELDER, which I think everybody was kind of putting in tier 2, myself included. There were 3 in day 2, piloted by very good players, 2 in top 8, toward Reklev and Nico Alabas, and then Nico actually took it to finals and won the whole tournament with MEWTWO WELDER. The deck really didn't get too much from the new set. It got Victini V and it got Quick Balls, and Victini V actually ended up being a very strong 2-prize attacker for this deck and for Ability ZARD, which I went over in yesterday's video. But MEWTWO WELDER, this is an interesting one. So we actually had an exact copy of the LAIC finals, MEWTWO WELDER versus Ability ZARD, except this time MEWTWO WELDER won. This one is another one I think it'll be interesting to see if it stays tier 1 throughout the standard format, or if it drops down to tier 2, or stays in tier 2 like many players, including myself, had placed it previous to the tournament. This could be an effect of many very good players playing it, and so it saw an inflated rate of success. Whereas also ZACIAN had many great players piloting it, but it did not win the tournament. So this is an interesting result, and I'm not exactly sure just what to make of it at this point. I do think this deck is viable for sure, but I'm just not sure if it will stay tier 1 for the remainder of the standard format, which has really just started. And ADP ZACIAN, of course, we got to talk about this one. So it had 23 ADP ZACIANs in day 2, which is an absurd amount, and 2 in top 8 with the asterisk next to it. So there was officially there was originally 1 ADP ZACIAN in day 2, but after the CINCCINO mill got DQ'd, an ADP ZACIAN got bumped up from 9th to 8th. That ADP ZACIAN did not get to play a top 8 match, but they were awarded top 8. So in the official results, it will show that there was 2 ADP ZACIAN in top 8. This deck is probably still going to be recognized as the best deck in format, or one of them. Definitely tier 1, definitely viable for standard format. I don't think this deck will drop below tier 1 or below like top 8 / winning the tournament potential for the remainder of standard format. Maybe some metas will counter it more heavily, or some metas will be more favorable for it, but it's definitely one of the best decks, if not the best deck in the format. I don't think that will change for the entirety of the Sword and Shield standard format. So these are the final standings. We looked at what decks made day 2. These are the decks that battled through day 2 to make it into top 8, and eventually one of them won. So there was in first place MEWTWO WELDER, runner-up Ability ZARD, 3rd place Obstagoon, 4th place CINCCINO mill, 5th place and 6th place ADP ZACIAN. 7th place MEWTWO Welder, and 8th place ADP ZACIAN. Let me just correct myself. There were 2 ADP ZACIANs originally, and then a third one got bumped up because of the CINCCINO mill getting DQ'd. Sorry about that. So when I said that there were 2 in top 8, there were originally 2 in top 8, and then a third one made it in because of the CINCCINO mill getting DQ'd. And that 8th place Jack Millar with ADP ZACIAN did not get to play the top 8 match because he was just bumped up into that place after the DQ occurred. So that is all I have to say right now about the day 2 analysis, but hopefully we'll get the day 1 meta share soon, and then we can look at conversion rates from day 1 into day 2, which is always very interesting to look at. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video and you would like to see more content in the future, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.